I hope you get that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pittsburgh guy here. This next review is of a comic book. Now, this comic book came out in March. Was it 83? 84? I'm so sorry. I should have researched it. I'll put it on the screen. I think it's 83. But this is the Uncanny X-Men, number 167. And when I was a kid, in 83, I would have been 9 years old. My grandfather always went to the bookstore. He played the numbers, the Daily Three, the Top Four. I don't know what he played, but he always played numbers, and he took me with him. One whole rack was all comic books. And, when I was a kid, I didn't know what comic books were, and I was very excited to see them. My very first was an X-Men comic book that I'll do in a later review. But this one here, you can see by the cover that Cyclops, Scott Summers, is holding Professor Xavier. So, and everyone looks sad in the picture. So when I saw this, I knew that Professor Xavier was the leader. And I thought to myself, wow, they just killed off like the main guy, the guy that put them all together. So I had to have it. So I always picked out a comic book, gave it to my grandfather, and he bought it, and I read it, and I loved it. So I kept every comic book he ever bought me. I think my dad bought me a couple. And then when I started making money shoveling snow, cutting grass, raking leaves, and then my first job working in a grocery store, stocking shelves, I just kept buying them. And I've got like 200 to 300 comic books, but I'm not going to rank them all because it's too hard to do, but this is one of my all-time favorites. So I'm going to review it. We're going to go through a couple of the pages, and it's something that I recommend. It's a very good issue. It has a lot of action, great artwork, good dialogue. But this is it, X-Men number 167. And the title of the comic book is, give me 2 seconds here, something sister, right? Hold on. The title of the comic book is The Goldilocks Syndrome. So let's review it.
So what really stood out to me when I saw this when I was a kid was the fact that Professor Xavier was being held by Cyclops. Like, did he die? Was he injured? Everyone looks sad. So I definitely had to have this one, because the X-Men were my favorite at the time. This is the introduction of the New Mutants. And now this is the total, the Goldilocks Syndrome, or Who's Been Sleeping in My Head. And you see the writer, the penciler, the inker, the graphics, or sorry, not graphics. The detail and the artwork is great. I was confused at first because these are the New Mutants and the X-Men just barge in, tearing it up. But Wolverine's claws were not out, so I thought this was training. So now we see Sam Guthrie, I believe his name is, Cannonball. And he is one of the few that I remember from the New Mutants because he's been on a couple cartoons as well. But as they're going through the rooms, you can see Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Kitty Pryde. They're all attacking them, but in a training type mode. Until Professor Xavier comes out, and as you can see, he turns into a brood. I'm not sure if it's a brood queen, because there's different versions of them, but they're one of the X-Men's great enemies. And one of my all-time favorite characters from the X-Men, Colossus, gets a nice little spot. He is, he's gentle, he's kind, he's powerful. I always loved his character. I didn't like him in Secret Wars because he seemed like he was kind of fizzled out, but he's really cool in this one. Now this next shot is super cool. Look at Wolverine bouncing off. He's pushing himself with his legs off of Colossus. This could be one of my all-time favorite Wolverine drawings in comic book history. Like, look how good he looks here. And this is with his brown and tan suit. And I also like his yellow and blue one, but that was a great version of him. And just the scene, like where he's jumping up and claws are out, and it makes that sound, that schnick sound. I think I said it right. And as you can see here, as we go further into the book, Wolverine wants to kill the Brood that took over Professor Xavier, but Cyclops, as the leader of the X-Men, is saying, you know what, he's in there, let's save him. So they bring in the Shi'ar, I believe that's what they're called, the Shi'ar, and everyone has their little moments where they're talking with each other and just, you know, having their special private thoughts within each other. And then you see Starjammer, I believe it's Corsair, with Cyclops, and apparently they're related. So, you know, everyone's related to everybody. Everyone dies in comic books and they always come back. Then we see Gladiator. He's extremely powerful. He has that famous mohawk. And of course he is dedicated to the Royal Guard. And, you know, as the story progresses, it starts out with a lot of action and then it winds down. And as you know, Professor X is alive, but he's in a different suit he's never worn. He gets up and he stands up and he walks. One thing I didn't understand about Professor Xavier in comic books, cartoons, and in the movies, the live action cinema, is he is an extremely powerful telepath. So why couldn't he like mentally make his legs work? You know, I always wondered that. But, you know, it is what it is. But the episode ends, or the comic book ends with Kitty Pryde being part of the New Mutants, and she's not part of the X-Men group.